The great hall of the alien capital was silent. Tall, cold lights shone down on the round chamber, and every seat of the High Council was filled. In the center stood a small human boy named Alden. His feet were bare on the metal floor. His hands shook, but he kept his head up. He was the last human child left in the galaxy, and everyone in the room stared at him like he was something dangerous. Alden did not understand why. He had never harmed anyone. He had lived his whole life in a quiet medical facility, watched by machines and guards. When they took him from that place, they did not explain anything. They only brought him here to a room filled with strange creatures. Some with glowing eyes, some with sharp wings, some with long silver skins. The High Chancellor, a tall alien named Vorik, stood and spoke in a deep, echoing voice. He said humans were too unpredictable. He said humans always changed things even when they did not mean to. He said Alden was a risk that the galaxy could not accept. The council members nodded and whispered to each other. Alden listened and tried to stay calm, but he felt something heavy forming in his chest. He thought they would send him to another school or another safe place. But he was wrong. Vorik announced the decision. Alden would be sent to Pyrax 9, the planet of the star dragons. It was called the End World. No one who entered ever returned. Soldiers, criminals, explorers, every one of them was gone. The dragons were giant, ancient creatures that lived in the burning valleys and glowing mountains of the world. Even the strongest armies would not go near it. Alden felt the air leave his lungs. He was only a child. How could they send him there? But the council members did not care. They only saw him as a problem that needed to be removed. The guards took him to a transport ship. The halls were long and cold. Alden walked in silence. He wanted to cry, but his tears would not come. He only held onto the small cloth bracelet he had made as a little boy. It was the only thing he had left from home. When the ship left the capital and the stars filled the windows, Alden sat alone in a corner. The guards did not speak to him. He stared at the stars and whispered, "Why me? What did I do?" No one answered. Hours later, the ship reached Pyrax 9. The planet glowed with rivers of red light. Storms of bright dust twisted across its sky. The surface looked alive like it breathed. The guards pushed Alden toward the exit ramp. He stepped onto the rough ground. The air felt warm and heavy. Far in the distance, something roared. The guards looked frightened even though they had weapons. One of them quickly pressed a button and the ramp closed. The ship lifted off and disappeared into the clouds, leaving Alden alone on the burning world. The ground rumbled. Alden backed away from a hill of black stone. The surface cracked. Huge scales appeared from beneath the ground. A deep growl rolled through the air. Alden froze. He had no weapon, no shield, no way to protect himself. The creature rose from the earth, massive, dark, and shaped like a dragon from ancient stories. Its wings opened like shadows stretching across the sky. Its eyes glowed with a soft blue fire as it stared at him. Alden's legs shook. He felt heat brush against his face as the dragon leaned closer. He expected fire. He expected claws. He expected to die. But something strange happened. The dragon stopped only a breath away from him. Its nose twitched like it was smelling something. It leaned closer, almost touching his bracelet. Alden stood very still. For a moment he felt the creature's breath, warm and steady. The dragon's glowing eyes changed. They softened as if it recognized something inside him. Alden whispered, barely able to speak, "I'm not here to hurt you." The dragon lowered its head. Its large wings folded. It let out a slow, low sound, not a roar but something gentler, something like curiosity. More rumbling filled the ground. Two other dragons appeared on the cliffs above. They watched but they did not attack. Their bodies glowed like stars trapped in scales. Alden slowly understood something important. They were not hunting him. They were studying him. And somehow, for a reason he could not explain, they did not see him as an enemy. The wind moved around him. The dragon's eyes followed his every step. Alden felt fear, but he also felt something new, a small spark of hope. He had been thrown here to be forgotten. But maybe this world was not the end. Maybe it was the beginning. And the dragons, the most powerful creatures in the galaxy, had just chosen to let him live. Alden stayed completely still as the giant dragon stood before him. Its wings were folded, but even then the creature looked as large as a small hill. The warm wind from its breath brushed his face again, but it did not burn him. Instead, the dragon lowered its head until its glowing blue eyes were level with his. It was studying him with slow, careful interest, like it was trying to understand what he was. Alden felt fear, but it was different now. It was not the fear of dying. It was the fear of not knowing what would happen next. he slowly lifted his hand, showing that he held no weapon. He whispered, "I won't hurt you." The dragon did not move. Instead, it made a deep sound from its chest, something between a growl and a hum. It tilted its head slightly as if confused. Alden thought it looked curious. He took a small step back, expecting the dragon to react. But the creature only followed him with its eyes. From the cliffs above, the two smaller dragons let out short calls. Their voices echoed across the valley like distant thunder. The large dragon responded with a low tone, one that felt like it vibrated the air itself. Alden did not understand the meaning, but he sensed one thing clearly: they were communicating about him. The large dragon finally stepped back and lifted its head high. It stretched its wings and the ground shook beneath Alden's feet. The dragon then pointed its head toward a glowing canyon in the distance. It looked down at Alden and made a clear sound, something sharp and guiding. Alden realized it was telling him to follow. His legs felt weak, but he forced himself to move. He walked slowly toward the direction the dragon pointed. The dragon moved with him, walking at a careful pace so it did not crush him under its giant claws. The two smaller dragons flew overhead, their bodies leaving trails of soft light. Alden glanced around the strange land. The rocks shimmered with sparks like stars trapped inside them. The sky was filled with thick clouds that glowed red and gold. Streams of bright dust floated through the air like slow-moving fireflies. He felt small and out of place, yet he also felt something he had not felt in a long time. He felt seen. As they moved deeper into the canyon, Alden noticed shapes carved into the stone walls. They were old symbols, swirling lines, and patterns that looked almost like writing. He reached out and touched one. The stone felt warm. The large dragon watched him with careful attention. A sudden flash of light burst from the carving he touched. Alden jumped back. The dragons all let out short surprised sounds. The lines on the stone glowed bright blue, spreading outward like waking veins of light. The canyon walls lit up around him. Alden looked down at his hand. It tingled with warmth. He did not understand, but the dragons seemed to. The large one stepped closer and lowered its head again. This time, Alden felt something like a question coming from it, not spoken in words but in feeling. It was as if the dragon was asking, "How did you do that?" Alden shook his head. "I don't know," he whispered. The dragons hummed in a low rhythm, almost like a choir. Their glowing eyes followed every movement he made. Alden felt a strange connection between himself and these creatures, a soft thread he could not see but could feel deep inside. The large dragon lowered its wing and placed it gently on the ground. Alden stared. It was an invitation. A place to climb. He hesitated. Then he slowly walked forward and placed his hand on the scaled surface. The dragon stayed still. Its scales were warm and smooth, glowing faintly under his touch. Alden took a deep breath, climbed onto the wing and pulled himself onto the dragon's back. The creature lifted him into the air. The wind rushed around him as they rose above the canyon. Alden held onto a ridge of scales tightly. Below, the glowing landscape spread out like another world. The two smaller dragons flew beside them, their wings slicing through the wind with grace. Alden could not believe what he was seeing. These dragons were supposed to be the deadliest monsters in the galaxy. Every story he had heard said they destroyed anything that came near them. But now they carried him as if they had chosen him. The dragons landed on a wide plateau where shining crystals grew from the ground. The large dragon lowered itself so Alden could climb down safely. When he stood on the ground, all three dragons circled around him and lowered their heads in a slow, respectful motion. Alden did not understand their language, but he understood the meaning of that gesture. They were not attacking him. They were not testing him. They were welcoming him. Alden touched his chest. The heavy fear he had felt on the council world was gone. Instead, a new feeling grew inside him, something like belonging. He did not know why the dragons chose him, but he knew something important. He was not alone anymore. Alden stood on the crystal plateau with the three dragons surrounding him. Their glowing eyes watched him with a strange mix of interest and patience. The large dragon, the one who first approached him, lowered its head close again. Alden placed his hand on its scale and felt a warm pulse run through his fingers, like a heartbeat. It was the beginning of something new. Days passed. Alden learned to live among the dragons. They brought him food, strange glowing fruits and warm stones that held drinkable water inside. They let him sleep inside a hollow cave protected by crystal walls that hummed softly at night. The large dragon always rested close to the entrance, like a silent guardian. Alden named him Vorgith because the sound of the dragon's growl reminded him of the deep hum in the name. The two smaller dragons he named Marisa and Soltran. They accepted the names with soft, approving sounds. Alden soon noticed that the dragons spoke in layers. Their growls were not random. Their humming sounds carried meaning. Their body movements, wings shifting, tails curling, eyes narrowing, were all part of a language. It was different from any language he had heard, but something inside him understood bits and pieces. When Vorgoth hummed low and steady, it meant calm. When Soltron tapped the ground with his claw, it meant warning. When Marisa curled her tail around her feet, it meant trust. Alden paid attention to everything. Slowly he began to respond with simple gestures. Hand movements, small sounds, steps forward or backward. The dragons watched him carefully and learned from him too. One morning, Alden woke to loud roars echoing across the valley. He ran out of the cave in fear, thinking the dragons were fighting. But instead he saw something incredible. Dozens of dragons circled above the plateau, their wings shining like moving stars. Vorgoth lowered himself beside Alden and gave a short growl. It was a call, an introduction. Alden understood. The dragons had brought him to meet the rest of their kind. More dragons landed. Some were huge like mountains, others smaller and agile. They surrounded Alden but kept a respectful distance. Vorgoth stepped forward and let out a long, deep roar. The sound rolled across the land, shaking the crystals on the ground. Alden felt the meaning behind it. Vorgoth was telling them something important. Something about him. The other dragons responded with layered calls. Their voices mixed in a powerful harmony. Alden covered his ears, but he also listened with his heart. He felt the meaning more than he heard it. They were asking who he was. They were asking why a human was here. They were asking what made him different. Vorgoth stepped aside and looked at Alden. It was a clear invitation. Alden had to speak. He took a slow breath and stepped into the center. His voice trembled, but he spoke anyway. I don't know why I'm here. I didn't choose this. I was sent because they were afraid of me. He pointed up toward the sky. The ones who sent me thought I would die here. But you didn't hurt me. The dragons listened. Their glowing eyes stayed fixed on him. Alden's heart pounded, but he continued. I don't want to harm any of you. I only want to understand. If you will let me, I want to learn. A soft wind passed through the plateau. A few dragons lowered their heads. Others leaned closer, curious. Marisa let out a bright, high hum. Soltron answered with a soft rumble. Vorgoth stepped behind Alden and let out a powerful roar, strong, proud, and clear. It echoed across the glowing hills. For a moment Alden did not understand. Then the dragons around him lowered their wings and bowed their heads. They accepted him. From that day Alden trained with Vorgoth. The giant dragon taught him to understand deeper meanings. The sound of old dragon songs, the patterns carved into the rocks, the way dragons used their energy to shape fire and light. Alden discovered he had a rare ability to sense the emotional signals behind dragon sounds. This was something even some dragons struggled with. When Alden learned a new sound, Vorgoth would touch his forehead with his snout, a sign of approval. When Alden made mistakes, Soltron would nudge him gently with his tail, and Marisa would hum a soothing tone. Alden was no longer a prisoner. He was part of them. Months passed and Alden grew stronger. He learned to climb onto Vorgoth's back without fear. His body grew used to the heat and weight of dragon wings beating above him. He learned to use the glowing stones to communicate with the ancient structures hidden in the cliffs. One night, while Alden practiced a dragon melody, something unexpected happened. The symbols on a large stone ring lit up with bright blue light. The ground trembled. Dragons around him lifted their heads in shock. Alden stepped closer. The light responded to him, following his steps like water flowing toward warmth. Vorgoth made a low sound filled with awe. Alden touched the center of the stone ring. The entire structure activated, revealing a hidden map of the galaxy and the long-lost bond between humans and dragons. A bond the High Council had erased. Alden stood before the glowing map, his breath shaking. The dragons watched him in silence. This was why they accepted him. This was why they chose him. This was why he was still alive. Alden realized he was not just learning from the dragons. He was their speaker, their bridge, their future. The sky above Pyrax 9 burned in colors of red and gold when Alden finally knew what he had to do. He stood with Vorgoth on the high plateau, the wind pushing against his clothes, the old stone map glowing behind him. The dragons had shown him their history, their language, and their trust. Now Alden understood something important. The galaxy believed he was dead. The High Council had thrown him away. They expected never to see him again. But Alden was alive. And he was not alone. Dragons gathered around him in a wide circle. Marisa and Soltron hummed gentle tones, sounds of encouragement. Vorgoth lowered his head and touched his snout to Alden's shoulder. The meaning was clear. It was time to return. Alden looked toward the sky. For months he had lived on a world of fire and glowing stone. Now he felt strong, confident, different. He knew the council would fear him even more now. But he also knew he could not hide forever. The galaxy needed to know the truth about the dragons, and about humans. Vorgoth knelt, lowering one wing. Alden climbed onto his back with movements that were now natural and easy. The sharp wind met him as Vorgoth rose into the sky. Dozens of dragons followed, their wings spreading like shining constellations. When they reached the upper atmosphere, Alden felt his heart tighten. Ahead of them floated a transport ship, the same design as the one that left him to die. The ship did not land on Pyrax 9 anymore. It only came close enough to drop criminals or machines. The people inside believed the surface was impossible to survive. Inside the ship, a group of guards saw the sudden light from dragon wings. Their screens flashed warnings. Their sensors could not identify the creatures. A captain shouted orders to raise shields. But the dragons did not attack. They flew around the ship in calm formation, shining like stars. Alden breathed slowly. "Take me closer," he whispered. Vorgoth glided forward, stopping only a few meters from the ship's observation window. Alden could see their shocked faces. The guards stared with disbelief, then fear, then confusion. Alden lifted one hand in greeting. The guards panicked. Alarms rang. Some shouted that it was a ghost. Others yelled that the child must be an illusion. But one older officer stepped forward, eyes wide, breath shaking. "It's him," she whispered. "The human child." She opened a channel. Her voice trembled. "This shouldn't be possible. You were sent here to die," Alden said gently. "I know." Her eyes filled with guilt. "How are you alive?" Alden glanced at Vorgoth and the dozens of dragons swirling behind them. "Because they chose not to kill me." The officer stared. No one had ever spoken of dragons with calmness. No one had ever looked at them without fear. Alden continued, "I need to return. I need to speak to the council." The officer hesitated. Her hands shook on the controls. Then she nodded slowly. "I will send a message. I don't know what they will say." Alden nodded back. "I'm not afraid anymore." The ship's bay doors opened. Alden slid down Vorgoth's wing and stepped onto the metal floor. The guards stepped back, unsure whether to bow or point weapons. Vorgoth let out a soft hum of reassurance, which shook the whole bay. Alden placed a hand on the dragon's snout. "I will call you if I need you." Vorgoth's eyes glowed, then he flew away with the rest of the dragons, returning to the clouds. Hours later, the ship reached the capital world. Crowds gathered in shock as Alden walked down the ramp. They whispered, stared, pointed. He walked calmly. He felt the warm memory of dragon hearts behind him, guiding every step. Inside the council hall, the same members who sentenced him to die now looked pale and terrified. The High Chancellor Vorik rose slowly from his seat, unable to hide the fear in his eyes. You survived," he whispered. Alden did not bow. He did not lower his head. He stood tall. "You were wrong about humans," Alden said softly. "And you were wrong about the dragons." Vorik struggled for words. "They let you live? Those monsters." "They are not monsters," Alden said firmly. "They think. They feel. They choose. You never tried to understand them." Council members began whispering. Some looked ashamed. Others looked angry. But none of them could look away. Alden continued, "You thought humans were dangerous because we changed things. Maybe that is true. But change is not always something to fear." Vorik stepped back. "You expect us to believe dragons would follow a human?" A sudden tremor shook the room. Light filled the windows. Outside, in the sky above the capital, hundreds of dragons appeared. Their wings glowed like living stars. Gasps filled the hall. Alden stood calm and steady. "They do not follow me because I am human. They follow me because I listened." The hall fell silent. Alden breathed in, feeling the strength of Vorgoth and the others behind him, even from across the sky. He had returned. He was alive. He was no longer a forgotten child. He was the voice the dragons trusted. And now the galaxy would have to listen. The chamber was silent when Arion stepped inside. Every alien leader, every general, every council elder stared at him like they were seeing a ghost. They had sent him to die. They had sent him to the star dragons, believing no human could survive. But he had returned, stronger, calm, and no longer alone. Behind him, giant shadows moved. 3 star dragons lowered their heads as they entered the hall. Their scales glowed like living fire, their wings folded with respect. The council froze. No creature had ever bowed to anyone except their own kind. But they bowed to Arion. He walked forward slowly, feeling the heat of the dragons at his back. His heart was steady now. He was no longer a frightened child. He was someone shaped by flame, storm, and bond. General Redhar stood first. "This is not possible," he whispered. "Dragons do not follow humans." Arion spoke in simple words. "They chose me, and I chose them. I did not return for revenge. I returned to stop a war." A deep rumble echoed. One of the dragons, Sereth, shifted closer and looked at the council with burning gold eyes. Every alien in the room trembled. The dragon's presence alone could crush armies. The High Elder narrowed his eyes. "If you truly want peace, then why come with beasts that destroyed half our fleets in the past?" Arion answered softly, "Because they listened to me, and because our enemies are coming." The room changed instantly. Whispers. Fear. Suck. The Star Hunters, an old enemy of the dragons, had been sighted near the system. Arion had seen their ships. He knew their hunger. They wanted dragons. They wanted humans. They wanted worlds. "They will not stop," Arion said. "But I can help you fight them." The council hesitated. They had feared humans for generations. Yet here was the last human child, now grown, now powerful, supported by the strongest creatures in their empire. A young officer stepped forward. "Why would you help us? After everything we did to you?" Arion took a long breath. "Because someone must break the old hate. And because if we fall apart now, the Star Hunters will burn every one of us." Silence. Then slowly the High Elder stood. "If you truly speak for the dragons, then you are no longer a child. You are something new." His voice lowered. "Something dangerous. Something powerful." Sereth let out a soft growl, protective. Arion calmly placed a hand on the dragon's snout. The beast quieted instantly. The elders exchanged looks. And at last they bowed their heads. "For the first time in our history," the High Elder said, "we accept a human as our leader. Human Arion, you will guide our fleets. You will command the dragons. You will stand as the Emperor of Starfire." The moment felt unreal. Arion did not smile. He simply stood straight, the way the dragons had taught him, strong, steady, unbroken. When he stepped onto the balcony before the people, thousands stared up at him. Many whispered in fear. Many whispered in hope. And above them all, the 3-star dragons spread their wings and roared into the sky, filling the air with blazing light. It was not a roar of war. It was a roar of loyalty. Arion raised his hand. "I am not here because I am human," he said loudly. "I am here because together we can survive. Together we can rise." The crowd listened. The dragons circled overhead like guards of living fire. And for the first time in the Empire's long violent history, every being, human, alien, and dragon, stood under the same sky with the same future. A future led by the human child who was never meant to live. Now the human Emperor of Starfire.